Dear students, welcome to e-content developed on session first, Victorian Literature Part 2, BA Optional English, 5th semester, Davangere University. I am going to explain syllabus prescribed by the university. Victorian Literature Part 2, Paper 6th has 3 units. First is Victorian poetry, second Victorian prose, third Victorian fiction. Before going to the syllabus, we will recap the previous semester syllabus, that is Romantic Age. In the previous semester, we have been studied what is Romanticism, background of the age, and also features of the age, as well as Romantic poets like William Blake, William Wordsworth, John Keats, P.B. Shelley, and famous Romantic novelist Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Learning objectives to help them to understand the introduction of Victorian age, to understand the introduction of prescribed Victorian poetry, prose, and fiction. After completion of this session, students will be enabled to understand the introduction of Victorian age. Students will be able to understand the introduction of prescribed Victorian poetry, prose, and fiction. And this session includes contents like this: the introduction of Victorian age, major events of the age, literary features of the age, Victorian poetry, Victorian prose, Victorian fiction, and also MCQs, assignments, and references. Introduction of the Victorian age. Victorian age was one of the most important period in the history of English literature. Queen Victoria, the last Hanoverian monarch, long reigned from 1837 to 1901, and the England society had a rich colonial trade and commerce and exploding population. And the England society is considered to have been priggish. It means self-righteousness, moralistic, and narrow-minded. Early Victorian literature witnessed the continuing spirit of Romanticism, whereas later Victorian literature saw the rise of modernism. This Victorian period has major events like this: rise of technology and innovation, industrial revolution, the great exhibition of London, the Indian rebellion 1857, the great Irish famine 1846 to 52, Irish home rule, the Charterist movement 1838 to 48, the great reform acts 1832, 1867, and 1884, final the Boer Wars, the Crimean War. These are all the major events occurred during the Victorian period. In detail, we will see in the fifth paper, Victorian Literature Part 1, Background section. And this Victorian era has some literary features we will see one by one now. Insistent on morality, property, revolt against the grossness of the earlier age, respect for convention. These kind of feature we will see in the works of Alfred Lord Tennyson and Charles Dickens. Revolt against convention. This kind of element we will come across in the works of Carlyle, Arnold, Thackeray, and Browning. The revolt strengthened with the age in pre-Raphaelites, and also the movement like Taxford, founded by Cardinal Newman. They like there is no morality except the author's regard for his heart. This period produced new ideas in the field of science, religion, and politics reflected in literature. And the spirit of skepticism here means an attitude of doubt, is found in Tennyson's In Memoriam and Idylls of the King and Arnold's Oxford movement, which reflected widespread discontent with the Church of England. After the Education Act of 1870, elementary become compulsory. Education is one of the important tool while developing a particular field, and this connected with an enormous reading public at this time. Printing and paper become cheap. Actually, the actual syllabus began now. Victorian poetry. Victorian poetry written in England during the reign of Queen Victoria 1837 to 1901. Victorian poets continued many of previous eras' main themes. Previous eras like Romantic Age, Augustan Age, Jacobean Age, like this. Uh, Such as religious skepticism and valoration of the artist as genius. The most prolific and well regarded poets of the age, like this Alfred Tennyson, Robert Browning, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Matthew Arnold, G.M. Hopkins, Thomas Hardy, Oscar Wilde, Christina Rossetti. In the poetry section, we have 8 poems like this Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach, Shakespeare, Thomas Hardy's Panoply or Green Slates and Satin Shoes, G.M. Hopkins' Thou Art Indeed Just Lad, The Windower, Christina Rossetti's In an Artist's Studio, and Remember. Victorian prose. Victorian prose was also informed by the spirit of realism and with intellectual debate on contemporary problems of religion, philosophy, politics, and arts. This features we will see in the works of these two writers. First is T.B. Macaulay. He wrote Macaulay's Minutes on Indian Education. This advocated the national system of education for India. And second is John Stuart Mill. He wrote On Liberty. This essay applies Mill's ethical system of utilitarianism to society and state. Finally, third unit is Victorian fiction. This genre was one of the most important genre in the Victorian period, predominant genre of the period. Charles Dickens, 1812 to 70. He was the most famous English novelist of the Victorian era. Dickens followed theme of social reform throughout his work. He created some of the most iconic role models in literature, like Art Times, Papers, etc. Among Dickens' works, Great Expectations, the best known for Dickens' work. In this work, he depicts his personal life. I can sum up the session, and here we have some MCQs here. Please refer these questions, and also assignments are there. Please attend these questions. Finally, we have references like this site source and Roy Oren, an outline history of English literature and English people, Roy Publishers and Distributors, Nagpur, 2001. Albert Edward, History of English Literature, Oxford University Press, New Delhi, 2013. Thank you all.